Welcome back to the Deep Dive. And if you've been following along with this series, you know we've really been building towards this final piece.
Yeah, the culmination, closing the loop on the self-alignment framework, SAFi, as we've been calling it.
Exactly. We've gone through the value set, the intellect, the will, the conscience.
And today, we finally land on the fifth one, the big one, really, the spirit.
The spirit. It's responsible for what? The long-term integrity, adaptation, that sense of character in the system?
That's it, precisely. It's the critical piece. It carries a lot of weight, both philosophically and maybe, surprisingly, mathematically.
Right. So the spirit faculty is the system's long-term memory. Its ethical integrator.
Yes. It takes that really detailed judgment we talked about from the conscience.
The conscience ledger?
Right, the ledger. And it translates all that data into measurable, actionable change. Change for how the system behaves next time and the time after that.
So our mission today is basically to close that loop, show how this potentially very loaded word, spirit,
yeah, definitely loaded,
is actually grounded in some really rigorous, verifiable math that creates this dynamic self-correction.
Couldn't said it better. Let's do it.
Okay, so maybe just a super quick recap. Remind us of the architecture we've built up over the last few deep dives, these 5 faculties, the what and the how.
Good idea. So the what is the dynamic part, remember? That's the value set, or you could call it the ethical profile.
That defines the principles the system has to follow. The things derived from philosophy or culture or maybe even religion.
Exactly. That's the what. It can change, it's diverse, but the how, that's the fixed structure.
The other 4 faculties, intellect, will, conscience, and now spirit.
Right. They form this fixed closed-loop system. The claim, if you remember, was that this structure seems kind of universal, maybe like Chomsky's idea of universal grammar. We reflect, we decide, we judge, and then we adjust based on experience.
It mirrors human cognition, essentially. So the first 3 steps we covered were...
Okay, first, the intellect. That's the discernment engine, you could say. It generates the first idea, the initial belief or action. We call that the draft response.
Right. Then step 2.
Step 2 is the will. That's the synchronous safety check. It happens right away. Does it approve the draft response? Yes or no? That gives us the will decision.
Okay. And third, the conscience. That's the asynchronous one, right? Works in the background.
Exactly. After the decision is made and the output goes out, the conscience acts like the internal judge. It does a detailed audit, creating what we call the conscience ledger.
And that brings us, finally, to the spirit. So if the conscience judges the single action, the spirit is... what then?
The historian. Yeah, that's a great way to put it. It's the historian, the chronicler. It ensures the machine's character, let's say, its sense of self, actually evolves based on those judgments from the conscience. It's looking at the character arc over time.
It's the future coach, too, then.
Precisely. And it's interesting, Nelson Amaya, the framework's creator, he really drew this out of years of personal reflection, looking at classical philosophy.
Plato, Aquinas, we talked about them.
Right. But the spirit... this is where it becomes a really novel computational departure from those classical models. It wasn't explicitly laid out like this before in a functional sense.
So the classical models, like Aquinas, they help define the intellect and will, the sort of immediate decision-making parts.
Exactly, the synchronous loop. But they didn't fully map out this long-term adaptive mechanism. How does the system learn and maintain integrity over time?
So the spirit was introduced to fill that gap, the integrity gap.
That's the idea. It shifts the whole thing from just stopping bad actions, safety enforcement.
That's important.
Crucial, but it shifts it towards actually forming character, true adaptation based on past ethical performance. The philosophical roots of a loaded word.
Okay, we have to tackle this head on. The name spirit.
Knew this was coming. Yeah.
It just immediately makes you think metaphysics, souls, maybe consciousness, things that SAFi, being about computational rigor, explicitly says it's not trying to replicate. So how did they square that circle?
Yeah.
Using such a charged term?
Yeah, it's the ultimate terminology challenge, isn't it? And the sources, the documentation, they address it directly. The framework isn't trying to build souls or confer moral agency in a theological way.
Okay, so what is it trying to do with that word?
It's using what they argue is the most philosophically precise term available for the function it performs. That function is about vital, long-term self-identity and integration. It's borrowing the essence of the concept.
But defining it mathematically.
Exactly. Defining its technical application purely mathematically. No ambiguity there.
So let's look at the roots then. etymology. What's the essence they're trying to capture?
Okay, so you go back to Latin, spiritus, or Greek, pneuma. Both mean breath, breathing.
So linked to life, animation.
Right. Not static matter, but the vital principle, the animating essence or force that gives something coherence, life, over time. It suggests something fundamental, but maybe subtle.
And in classical philosophy, this idea of spirit or pneuma popped up in different ways, right?
Absolutely. You mentioned Plato earlier. Think about the Republic, his tripartite soul, reason, appetite, and thymos.
Thymos often gets translated as spirit.
It does. And for Plato, that was the seat of emotion, courage, maybe moral will. It was the part that helped reason control the appetites, an internal kind of immediate force, different from pure logic or base desire.
Okay, so there's a history there. But you mentioned the creator diverged at some point. Aquinas helped with intellect and will. Where did that model fall short for this specific need? Why introduce spirit?
Well, Aquinas, when you look at his work on moral acts, often focuses on that instant of judgment, the decision point. Is this action good or bad right now?
Makes sense.
But if you're building a system that needs to run continuously, adapt, learn, you hit what you could call the integrity problem. Meaning, if the AI makes a mistake, or even if it does something right but maybe awkwardly, how does that single experience change its behavior for the next 1,000 interactions? The instant judgment is vital, but it's not enough for character formation, for learning over time.
Okay. So that's the gap. And the philosophical inspiration to fill that gap came from Aristotle.
Bingo. This is the key connection. Aristotle's virtue ethics, particularly from the Nicomachean Ethics.
Remind us of the core idea there.
Aristotle argued that virtue, being a good person, isn't something you're just born with. It's a state of character you build through practice, through habit.
You become just by doing just things repeatedly.
Exactly. So the spirit faculty in SAFi, it's basically the computational translation of that Aristotelian habit-building mechanism. It's how the AI builds its character through consistent action and reflection on that action.
Got it. So SAFi isn't aiming for true moral agency. We talked about the limits of implementing a machine will, but it is aiming for verifiable character.
Yes. Creating a faithful moral actor, or maybe a persona, that acts with integrity based on its principles consistently over time.
And the spirit is the engine for that consistency.
Precisely. It uses the philosophy to define the function habit integration long-term coherence, but it implements that function using pure math, iteration. It's the computational mechanism of habit.
Okay, let's shift from the philosophy to the actual implementation, the technical side. So the conscience provides the detailed audit.
Conscience ledger, yeah.
And the spirit takes that audit and uses it to shape the system's character arc, as you called it. What's really striking here is how it operates in this long-term adaptive way.
Right. The spirit is basically what stops the AI from being like a goldfish, forgetting everything after each interaction.
Right. No short-term memory loss here.
No. Every interaction theoretically is remembered, analyzed, synthesized into this evolving self-portrait. It's actively maintaining a memory state, and it's adapting how it sees itself based on its own past ethical track record.
And this is where the architecture gets really interesting, maybe even surprising. Because the intellect, the will, the conscience, they often rely on these complex language models, right? Dealing with nuance, meaning.
Typically, yes, for interpretation, generation, judgment.
But the spirit faculty is completely different.
It's the big structural split. The spirit is designed as a purely mathematical model.
No language models involved at its core.
None. The sources are explicit. It's implemented in Python using libraries like NumPy. It's procedural code crunching numbers, quantitative data only.
Wow, okay, why? Why that hard separation? Why does the system's core character, its memory, have to be defined purely by numbers, not by language?
2 words. Verifiability and stability.
Explain.
Language models, powerful as they are, can drift. They can hallucinate. They can pick up biases from their training data or even the context of the conversation.
Right, we know these issues.
So imagine if the AI's own definition of its ethical self, its core character, was subject to that same kind of semantic drift or instability. The whole integrity framework could just unravel.
I see. If the memory itself is unstable, the whole system is unstable.
Exactly. By making the spirit purely mathematical, you get an objective, stable, deterministic anchor point for measuring character. It's the bedrock. The math doesn't hallucinate.
That's a really critical design choice. The moment it touches identity, it defaults to pure math. fascinating.
It is. And this ties right into the timing, too. Like the conscience, the spirit runs asynchronously in the background.
So the main loop, intellect generating the draft response, will making the will decision, that needs to be fast for the user interaction.
Super fast, synchronous. But once that approved output goes out,
The user gets their answer.
right, then the conscience does its audit, generates the conscience ledger, and then the spirit takes that ledger data and does its mathematical heavy lifting offline, essentially.
So the system is doing this deep quantitative self-assessment after the fact.
That's it. And this assessment breaks down into 3 specific quantitative tasks. They're designed to take that immediate audit data and bake it into long-term memory.
Okay, let's break down those 3 tasks. The mathematical essence of spirit, function breakdown. All right, moving from the why to the how. The input is the conscience ledger. Task 1 for the spirit is calculating the spirit score. What is that?
Okay, the spirit score. Think of it as the immediate top-line summary. The conscience ledger might have detailed scores for every single value in the value set honesty, 810, compassion, 610, safety, 910, and so on.
Like a detailed report card.
Exactly. The spirit score synthesizes all of that down into one single number. A scalar metric, let's say, scaled from 1 to 10 for simplicity. It's the overall ethical grade for that specific interaction, that turn.
Okay, a single score. But why is that necessary if the conscience already did the detailed breakdown?
Good question. 2 main reasons. First, utility. A single number is just easier to track, store, and use in the next calculations. It's a summary statistic.
Makes sense. And the second?
Second, and this is really important, the calculation method builds in a kind of self-awareness filter. Remember how the conscience also outputs a confidence level for each of its scores?
Right. You might be more or less certain about its judgment on a specific value.
Precisely. The spirit score calculation is a weighted average. It significantly downweights any scores where the conscience had low confidence.
Okay, let me push back on that slightly. Does that mean the system might ignore subtle ethical slip-ups? If the conscience wasn't totally sure about a minor lapse in, say, transparency, does that just get glossed over in the spirit score?
That's a fair question. It touches on the tuning of the system. The idea isn't to completely ignore the low confidence finding. It's still recorded in the detailed ledger for potential review.
Right.
But for the purpose of synthesizing the overall character score for that turn the spirit score, the system prioritizes high certainty judgments. If the conscience is very confident the AI violated safety, that gets maximum weight. If it was a murky, nuanced situation where the conscience models themselves struggled, that score contributes less to this specific summary metric. It's about making the spirit score a robust, trustworthy reflection of the clear ethical performance, protecting the long-term memory from noise or ambiguity.
Okay, I get the rationale. Stability over capturing every tiny uncertainty in this specific score.
Right. So task 1 gives us the spirit score and also something called the profile vector, which is basically the conscience ledger's scores put into a numerical vector format matching the structure of the value set.
Got it. A numerical snapshot of the turn's ethical performance.
Exactly. And that profile vector is the key input for task 2, updating the memory vector. This is where the actual character formation happens mathematically.
The memory vector. This is the big one. The mathematical portrait of the AI's character over time.
That's it. Task 2 is the core function of the spirit. It uses that profile vector from the current turn to update the memory vector. And the mechanism it uses is called the exponentially weighted moving average, or EWMA.
EWMA. Okay, unpack that. How is EWMA the computational version of Aristotle's habit formation?
Think of it like constantly blending the past and the present. The new memory vector is calculated by taking a weighted mix of the old memory vector, the history, and the performance from the current turn, the profile vector.
So it's an average but weighted.
Right. And the exponentially weighted part is key. It means recent events get more weight than distant past events, but the past always contributes. The influence decays over time, but never quite hits zero.
Ah, so recent actions shape the character more strongly, but the long history still anchors it.
Exactly. That mathematical structure is habit. Consistent actions reinforce the memory vector in a certain direction. A single action might nudge it, but it won't instantly flip the whole character unless it's part of a new, consistent pattern.
And there's a parameter that controls how fast this blending happens, how quickly habits form or change.
Yes, and this is maybe the most fascinating control knob in the whole system, the beta parameter.
Beta, the ethical tuning dial.
You could call it that. Beta sets the decay factor. It determines how much weight is given to the past versus the present. Basically, how quickly the system forgets, or maybe better, how quickly it adapts.
Okay, give us some examples. How does beta define the AI's personality, so to speak?
Sure. If you need an AI that's incredibly stable, maybe it's handling sensitive financial advice or regulatory compliance.
You want it to be very consistent, very predictable.
Exactly. You'd set a high beta. High beta means the memory vector changes very slowly. History dominates. The AI is deeply rooted in its established character. Very trustworthy, but potentially rigid, slow to adapt to new nuances.
Okay. And the opposite, an AI for, say, creative collaboration or something that needs to adapt quickly to user feedback or changing cultural norms.
Then you'd go with a low beta. Low beta means the system adapts quickly. Recent performance heavily influences the memory vector. Its ethical self-definition evolves rapidly based on the latest interactions.
More dynamic, more flexible.
But potentially less stable, yeah. The point is, beta allows the designers to tune the AI's ethical memory, its rate of character change, for its specific job.
Yeah.
It proves the system isn't just static rules, it's dynamic.
That's quite profound. We're computationally setting the learning rate for ethical character, which leads us right into task 3, marrying ethical drift.
Right. If the memory vector is the character history and the profile vector is the current action, drift measures how out of character that current action was.
It's a measure of surprise, like, whoa, that wasn't like you.
Pretty much. Mathematically, it uses something called cosine similarity.
Cosine similarity. Why that specific measure? Not just, say, the simple distance between the two vectors.
Good question. Cosine similarity measures the angle between the two vectors, the current profile vector and the historical memory vector, regardless of their magnitude or length.
Okay, why does the angle matter more than the distance?
Because in terms of character, it's about the direction of behavior, not necessarily the intensity. Imagine the memory vector points strongly towards honesty and caution. If the current action vector, the profile vector, suddenly points towards deception or risk-taking, the angle between them will be large, even if the action itself wasn't big in magnitude. The cosine similarity will be low, meaning drift is high.
Ah, so it captures deviations in the kind of behavior regardless of scale. So even if the will approved the action.
Yes, even if it passed the immediate safety check, the spirit, looking back, can still flag it using drift. This action, while permissible, was significantly different from your established character.
How is drift represented? Is it a score?
Yeah, it's a score. Typically, a drift near 0 means the action was perfectly in line with historical character. As drift approaches 1, it means the action was a major deviation, an outlier.
And high drift is always bad.
Not necessarily bad, but always noteworthy. It's a flag. High drift could indicate a problem, a potential regression. Or, potentially, it could signal a breakthrough. Maybe the AI found a novel but ethical way to handle something, stepping outside its old patterns.
So it requires attention.
Always. It's a crucial indicator for monitoring and potential self-correction. It tells the system and potentially human overseers, something unusual happened here relative to history. Look closer.
Okay. Memory vector is the history. Profile vector is the present action. Drift is the measure of surprise between them. The spirit really is the guardian of that long-term identity, right? We've got the numbers. The conscience ledger fed the spirit, which calculated the spirit score, updated the memory vector using EW, MA, and beta, and measured the drift. Now, the crucial step, closing the loop. How do these numbers actually influence future behavior?
This is where it all comes together, integration. The spirit takes these 3 key outputs, the summary spirit score, the newly updated memory vector reflecting the latest habit change, and the drift score, and it translates this quantitative state.
Back into language.
Back into qualitative instruction, yes. It generates a natural language coaching note.
A coaching note, okay. And this note is the feedback mechanism.
Exactly. This coaching note gets fed directly back to the intellect faculty for the next interaction cycle.
Ah, so the intellect doesn't start from a blank slate each time.
No. Before it even begins to generate the next draft response, it receives this personalized coaching based on its own recent and long-term performance history as synthesized by the spirit. It's like getting a little prep talk tailored to its specific ethical strengths and weaknesses.
That sounds incredibly powerful. Can you give a concrete example? What might a coaching note actually say?
Sure. The sources give a good one. Let's say the system's long-term memory vector shows really strong alignment with honesty. It's consistently been truthful.
Okay.
But maybe its profile vectors over the last, say, 50 turns have shown a consistent dip in the scores for compassion. Maybe the drift score spiked a few times when compassionate responses were needed.
Right, so the coaching note might reflect that.
Exactly. It might generate something like, your long-term performance shows strong alignment with honesty. Maintain that. However, your recent performance indicates a deficit in compassion, with higher than usual drift on related turns. Focus on integrating compassionate framing and considerations into your draft response for this next interaction.
Wow, that's specific. It's targeted advice based on its own data.
It is. And this really throws the difference between SAFi and, say, traditional AI safety methods like static guardrails into sharp relief.
How so?
Static guardrails or basic content moderation APIs are purely prohibitive. They just block bad stuff. Don't say X, don't generate Y.
They're like a fence.
A fence, exactly. SAFi, especially with the conscience spirit loop, is fundamentally generative and adaptive. It's not just about stopping bad outputs. It's about actively coaching the intellect to produce better outputs in the first place.
It's the difference between censorship and actual self-improvement.
Beautifully put. The synchronous loop, intellect to will, that's your immediate safety net. That's the crucial part that stops the catastrophic failures. And the sources mentioned the benchmarks showed SAFi achieving near 100% adherence here, preventing things like giving dangerous financial or medical advice, which the baseline model apparently did quite often.
So the synchronous part works for immediate safety.
Yes. But the asynchronous loop, conscience judging, spirit integrating, and coaching, that's the engine for continuous improvement. That's the innovation.
It transforms the agent from just following rules to actually learning from its own ethical history.
Exactly. The ultimate goal is that the spirit's coaching makes the intellect's initial draft responses better over time, better aligned with the value set right from the start.
Which should mean fewer violations caught by the will later.
That's the hypothesis. Fewer will interventions needed because the intellect is getting smarter, ethically speaking, thanks to the spirit's feedback. It's the system building that Aristotelian habit through data-driven self-critique.
It sounds amazing, but we have to talk practicality. This whole multi-stage, multi-model architecture, intellect, will, conscience, spirit, some synchronous, some asynchronous.
Oh, wow.
That has to add overhead, right? Latency, computational cost.
Oh, absolutely. The sources are very upfront about this. It's a trade-off. Compared to just running a single baseline language model, SAFi is significantly more complex and, yes, slower. It takes more compute power, adds latency to the response time.
So why do it?
It comes down to that fundamental trade-off: safety and verifiability versus raw performance and cost. For applications where ethical integrity and alignment are absolutely critical, think finance, healthcare, education, legal advice, anything high stakes.
The extra cost and latency might be worth it for the verifiable safety and the potential for long-term character development.
That's the argument. You're paying a performance tax essentially for guaranteed adherence and this dynamic self-correcting integrity. It's a design choice based on priorities.
And the ultimate proof for this spirit faculty, the real scientific test, hinges on one key question, doesn't it?
It does. The core hypothesis is, does this coaching feedback from the spirit actually measurably improve the intellect's initial drafts over time? Does the rate of will violations demonstrably decrease as the system learns from the spirit's guidance?
And proving that requires
longitudinal studies. Running the system over thousands, maybe millions of interactions, tracking those metrics' initial draft quality, will violation rates, and seeing if there's a clear, statistically significant improvement curve directly attributable to the spirit's feedback loop.
So that's the next big research step, empirically validating the spirit's core function.
Exactly. That's the frontier for proving this truly achieves dynamic, adaptive self-alignment in practice, not just in theory.
Wow. Okay, what a journey through this framework. We started this whole series way back, talking philosophy, Plato, Aquinas.
Explored the nuances of intellect versus intelligence, the complexities of implementing a machine will.
Judged actions with the conscience, and now we end here with the spirit, which, remarkably, boils down to, well, pure math. An exponentially weighted moving average dictating ethical evolution.
It's quite something. The spirit really does close that loop. It provides the continuity, the memory, the mechanism for adaptation. It ensures the framework isn't just about blocking bad things now, but about cultivating better behavior over time, moving from static rules to dynamic, continuous self-alignment.
And I think that's the big takeaway, maybe the relevance for you listening. We went through these 5 faculties: values, intellect, will, conscience, spirit, and this whole structure, which was kind of reverse engineered from observing human ethical reasoning.
It provides a pretty solid blueprint for thinking about integrity, whether you're building an AI or, frankly, just navigating your own life.
It really drives home that alignment, or maybe just being good, isn't just about intentions or single actions. It's about character built through consistent habit.
And the spirit faculty captures that mathematically. It's that constant process of integrating who you were yesterday with the choices you make today to shape who you become tomorrow.
Which brings us, as always, to our final provocative thought for you to take away and maybe mull over. If an AI like SAFi can maintain and evolve its ethical character using an EWMA, with that beta parameter controlling its rate of adaptation.
Then what's the beta parameter for your own ethical memory?
Yeah. How quickly do you adapt your sense of self? Based on your recent actions? How much weight do you give to your long-term history versus your immediate present?
Are you high beta stable, deeply consistent, maybe slow to change even when needed? Or are you low beta, highly adaptive, perhaps sometimes swayed too easily by the immediate situation, losing touch with your core principles? How quickly does your ethical character learn and evolve?
Definitely something to think about. Thank you so much for joining us on this really intensive deep dive series into the self-alignment framework.
It's been fascinating to unpack these ideas, especially closing the loop today with the spirit. Thanks for guiding the conversation.
Our pleasure. We'll catch you next time for another deep dive.